Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's training session, which is all about managing transitions. Thanks, Nicola. The purpose of this session is to either support you in transitions that you might be going through your life and how to navigate managing your business around those, or equally to support team members that might be going through different stages in their life and how you can best support them to keep their business going and not kind of let all their hard work go to waste. So I am delighted to be joined this evening by Karen Chamberlain, who some of you might be familiar with, some of you won't be familiar with. So I'm going to hand over to Karen now, but actually before I do, just to say, if you've got any questions that come up while Karen is talking, if you can pop them in the chat, then either Karen will answer them as she goes through, or it might be that we answer them at the end, but they won't get forgotten about. So if you've got a question, do pop it in the chat. Don't forget it or sit on it. Just put it in the chat. And if you're thinking it, someone else is probably thinking it as well. And then we can go through those at the end. So I'm going to hand over to Karen. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, Karen, and letting us know a bit about you, and then we can start the session.
Yes, lovely. Thank you, Lucy, for that really lovely welcome. And good evening, welcome, and thank you very much for joining the session this evening. I can't see any faces apart from Lucy, and I know some of your names on here, so I'd love to see you if you're happy to come on. If not, we understand, that's absolutely fine. But yeah, if you're kind of feeling like you could come and let us see your lovely faces, we would love to see that. It's going to be quite interactive. We're going to be using the chat box quite a bit. So there's an opportunity for you to answer questions, tell us a little bit about you. I'm going to be asking you to answer a few different questions around a transition that you are currently navigating, or it might be one that you have got coming up or one that you have recently experienced. So it's really relatable, and you can then relate that to your own situations and think about how you can apply some of the tools and the models within your own personal and professional worlds. So yeah, I'm Karen Chamberlain. I know some of you on the group this evening, so a really warm welcome to all names, faces, familiar and new. It's great to be working with you here today. So I've been working with Usborne now on and off since, actually I worked out, it's 10 years ago. So 2015 I started working with Usborne, particularly focusing on leadership development and helping people sort of bring out the best in themselves and building confidence, resilience, and a whole host of other skills to help you bring out your amazing selves. So I'm going to share with you a few slides this evening. So as I do that, I can still see on my right-hand side. And for those of you that want to see the slides, but also want to see other people in the group, you should be able to go up to the little grid on the right-hand side and hit View Gallery, and then you can see the different people that are here. So let's move on to the next piece. So yeah, this next hour is very much an opportunity to focus on you. So I'm going to invite you to throw aside any other things that might get in your way and distract you from this evening, because this is all about you and your own sort of personal leadership development time. Chance for you to pause and reflect on your own transitions and gain valuable insights and practical strategies. And certainly from my experience as a facilitator, but also as a learner or an attendee, the best way to do that is just to allow yourselves just to absorb and not kind of get drawn into anything else if you can help it. So yeah, phones away, shutting all your notifications down, and just immerse yourself and let yourself be kind of led through a series of activities and exercises to focus on you over the next hour. So just to hear a little bit about yourselves, if you could pop into the chat and tell me a bit about your day using just the emojis. So you'll see that there's a reaction screen, a reaction button at the end of your screen that will enable you to put those elements into chat. And then I'm going to pop into chat in a second and see what you're sharing with me, to see what sort of day you might have been having. Waiting in anticipation as people find the emojis and see what sort of day you've been having. I'm trying to find a hot one, actually. I can't find one, but the only hot one, oh, here we go. That's got to be one of the one, isn't it? That's definitely something for today. I'm going to just share one. So I'm going to let you think about what you'd like. Oh, lovely, mate, Vicky. I'm loving all of these. Fabulous. That's great. She's done a bit of walking, a bit of dancing. I think the dog's been involved. Fabulous. Love that. Any others want to share? What's your day been like in emojis today? I'm going to pop back and have a little look in a moment, but I'm going to go back to my slides for now as we sort of move into the session. So just a little bit about myself. Some of you will know some of this. For some of you, it will be new. I live in Bedford with my family, and I have two daughters, age 16. And they learned to read using Usborne books. And I was a very happy customer who loved hosting book parties. And I've been running my own business, helping leaders and their teams to grow and strengthen. And that's coming up for its 14th birthday in a couple of months' time. And then in 2015, Usborne became a regular client. So I've been kind of working with Usborne in different kind of sporadic sections since 2015. A lot of involvement around sort of leadership development there. And this has been a topic and a theme for this year. And part of that actually was born out of another piece of work that I do, which is to provide parental return to work coaching. So, I was sharing this with Lucy on one of our sort of catch up emails, and that born out of that another conversation with regards to actually what support and resources could we offer the wider Usborne population of leaders and partners in providing tools to help people manage transitions for themselves, appreciating that we all experience a whole wide range of transitions over different sort of parts of our life. So that's what we'll be diving into today. And a couple of things that I love to do. I enjoy running, I like to paint, and I also enjoy being by the sea. And actually, I like doing all three together. That has happened once. That's another story. Okay. So I mentioned doing a piece on transitions with leaders, and this happened in early February this year at LA. And one quote that really struck a chord of somebody that shared on their feedback after the event were these words. So incredible for releasing a lot of what was holding me back and seeing that everyone in the room goes through the ups and downs instead of just seeing everyone's wins and thinking there was something wrong with me. And I do hear this a lot with different clients, actually, particularly through coaching conversations where people can have the perception or the kind of view that actually they're the only ones that are either struggling or they feel like they're the only ones that aren't holding it together. And as we know, and through these sessions, we can kind of recognise that a lot of people resonate with different elements. We just don't know what's happening in other people's worlds. So I thought this was a really, really powerful sort of piece here. So a couple of bits of input here before asking you another question in chat, which is just a kind of a definition to help us really get some clarity around transition. So, in essence, life transitions are changes in an individual's life that require them to adapt and to adjust. Some of those transitions feel massive, some of them feel quite small, some of them will be quite drawn out and happen over a long period of time. Other life transitions can happen quite quickly. So we'll kind of explore a few different examples of those this evening. But in essence, there's a drive there to do something different, adapting and readjusting along the way. So what I'm going to ask you to now do is share with me in the chat what transitions have you encountered, generally speaking, and also specifically as women. What are some of those examples of transitions that you have encountered? And I'm just going to bring my camera back up so I can pop in and see what you pop into the chat, just looking at some of the other emojis. Perhaps maybe you could put 3 different types of life transitions into your chat box and hit the send button and see what you're coming up with. This is where we imagine that you're busy typing away, waiting for that reply to come in. Okay. Thank you, Louise. I started a new job 6 months ago. Yeah, working from 2 days a week to working full time. So yeah, that's quite a significant one, isn't it? So thank you for sharing that. Senior school and parent. Thank you, Gemma. Yeah, absolutely. Motherhood relocation. Changing to have a hubby who also wants to work from home. Yes, it's very new, exciting, but quite a change. I remember going through something similar previously. And Grace, currently heavily pregnant, and you have a 3-year-old already. So yeah, lots and lots of different examples there. Thank you so much for sharing those. Okay, let's bring up the next slide. So what I've done here is just to collate, and there are more different examples of transitions, but these are just some of those. And just working through that list, there'll be potentially a few of those that you relate to from different times of life, different stages, ones that you might see that are going to happen, in the future. But yeah, life itself, as we know, presents a whole host of different types of transitions. And just building on some more Usborne kind of sort of specific elements here, linking into some of these things. So, you might have received, you may have like started to develop a team. So you're now leading a team as well as managing your own partner business. You might have launched into schools, and then all of a sudden you've got, a few different conversations to be having with different people, and you're needing to think about, well, how do I manage that within my business? Because I'm now needing to operate that in a slightly different way. It might be that you're running your husband's business alongside working within another role within a different organisation as well. So lots of things are happening all the time. It could also be a seasonal thing. I don't know about you, but the summer holidays are coming up really, really quickly. So with that, there's that recognition, at times that I may need to be adapting how I operate within my business, what's different. And what do I then need to be adapting along the way to ensure that we get the summer that we're particularly looking forward to and excited for. But then there's another transition around the corner as we then return back to school, and that could also involve school changes or empty nesters, a whole host of different things. People going off to college, different levels of independence. The teenagers and the angst and excitement that all that can bring. There's a whole host of things. So as we're kind of explaining lots of different or sharing different examples there, lots of those will overlap as well. So at times we are managing a number of different transitions. So it's not surprising. That it's so important as well to kind of recognize what can I be doing to then sort of manage that, because with that there'll be a whole host of different kind of emotional and other sorts of reactions that we're going to be experiencing. Some will be positive, others can feel quite overwhelming. So how can we best manage that? What can we do that we have control over? What steps can we take to make positive steps forward? And also appreciate and give ourselves recognition that sometimes life can just be, or stages of life can be quite tough, and it's perhaps a little bit of being kind to ourselves. So let's just have a look at the differing kind of sort of difference really between change and transition, and how we make the difference between the two. So yeah, change is something that happens to people, even if they don't agree with it. Lots of different things that can happen, some of which we've asked for, or perhaps we're quite happy about. There'll also be things that we perhaps haven't asked for, or we may not agree to. Whereas transition, on the other hand, is internal. It's what's happening within our own minds as we go through change. And there are different strategies that we can apply and different practices that we can bring into our sort of day-to-day, week-to-week lives that can help drive those changes in the most positive way. I know one of the kind of aspects that I've worked with Osborne and previously is mindset. And, mindset is such a powerful, powerful tool. It's a resource that we have, how we approach in different situations. Are we operating more of a growth mindset or more of a fixed mindset? And actually, depending on where we're operating from, can make quite a change, quite a difference on how we then navigate through that change. So a whole host of wonderful resources at our at our fingertips to kind of work through. And of course, they will take time to practice and develop those skills. Change can also happen very quickly, while transition itself usually occurs more slowly. So you might see that there's a change up ahead. My daughters are going to university next year. That's certainly the plan. It's a massive change that's in the distance, but actually we're noticing that already we're starting to go through that transition and different reactions and emotions and different kind of actions for us to take forward to be best ready for this. And it's, yeah, throws everything up in the air and it's going to land quite differently. But having these tools can be really, really helpful in making sense of what's going on for us and, again, how we can best navigate through that change. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do for me now is to think about what are some of the challenges that you experience when managing yourselves through that change. Yes, what are some of the challenges that you experience as part of those life transitions through change? What do you find perhaps challenging or more difficult? If you could pop your answers into the chat box, that would be really, really helpful. And I'm just going to stop sharing just for a second here so I can see everybody and keep an eye on the chat. Some of the different challenges that you experience. Again, thinking about a current change that you're navigating, or perhaps one that you've recently had, or perhaps one that's up ahead, like I've shared. What's some of those challenges? Okay, thank you, Louise. Thinking I struggle most with the uncertainty, very much thrive on routine and structure, so I don't cope very well with the unknown. I totally get that, totally understand that. Resistance, yeah, anger doesn't feel fair, feels stressful and feels overwhelming. So lots, whole kind of collection of different reactions and how it recognizing what it is, perhaps whether it's uncertainty, but also recognizing actually how we ourselves might respond to that, noticing that, and also then how do we manage ourselves through those different emotions that we might be experiencing. Okay, thank you very much for that. Keep sharing those into the chat. Thank you, Grace. So due a baby soon, but your business has suddenly grown in team and amount of sales drastically, and you're scared of losing that momentum, being forced to slow down due to poor health when I wasn't prepared to slow down. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I hear you and I totally understand. And yeah, lots of different kind of elements are there to sort of unpick, isn't there? So I'm hoping this next session, and in fact, I am hopeful in this next session, I'm going to share with you a tool to help start to think about how, what might be some of the different steps that you can take to navigate through those different changes that you've experienced and the emotions that you've shared there as well. So what I think is going to be really helpful for this next activity is to choose a particular transition that you are navigating, and use that as an example. So, you know, Gemma, you shared your example in here. Thank you. And you mentioned about the uncertainty, Louise. So whatever that particular kind of topic is, if you feel that's something that you really value from spending some, hi Nicola, some time exploring this evening, then please do so. Okay, so with that one particular change in mind that you're navigating, let me just bring up my slides. And what I'm going to do first of all is just to spend a little bit of time giving some kind of background and context for Bridges transitions model. And how I like to describe this model is something that helps us make sense of things. What I often find when working with people is understanding why we're reacting to certain aspects of change can be really helpful in just making sense of things. Whereas before being introduced to some of these models and seeing where we might appear at different stages, we can find ourselves given ourselves quite a difficult time. You know, why am I feeling like this? Why am I struggling? Why am I feeling emotional? How can I kind of get through to a more positive state? Whereas actually, the process that we're going through as we navigate through these changes can be quite an emotional one. There's different steps that we're going to go through. So actually, how can we recognize those emotions and see and accept, that they're there for a reason? But what might be some of the steps that I can take to help best make sense of it? And then navigate that change in the most positive way. And as Lucy mentioned at the beginning part of this session, there's elements here around thinking about what you can take away from this evening's session to best manage that transition for yourself. But it's also thinking about other people that you work alongside, or you might have a colleague or a team member who you're working alongside, and you recognise, that they're going through different stages of this curve as well, and it can kind of help you think about, well, maybe how can I best kind of empathise, or perhaps try and put myself in their shoes, or it might just be that I recognise that they need a listening ear, and perhaps there's some questions that I could ask that might just help them with their thinking, or encouraging them just to take some time to, pause and reflect and notice what's going on for themselves right now. So you'll see that this particular model here is broken down into 3 key stages. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my own example of when I set my own business up, which, as I mentioned, was about 14 years ago now. So it still feels very, very clear for me when that all started. And I would certainly agree with some of those emotions that I was experiencing here as I embarked on starting up my own business, which was quite a sudden change for me, having sort of been made redundant only a short time previous to that. So I was still navigating all of the emotions and the reactions that came with redundancy when an opportunity presented itself for me to then start my own business. I had a client waiting who was interested in leadership development. So I made the decision to give it a try. What's the worst that can happen? And set myself a time scale to set up the business and see how that goes. And here we are, 14 years later. And as you can imagine, as I think most people tend to experience, it's been quite a roller coaster. But certainly, yeah, as I say, making sense of what's happening or what was happening really helped with regards to that as well. So yeah, as the new business starts to unfold and get set up, there was a lot of uncertainty. Who did I want my clients to be? How much money did I need to generate each month? What hours did I want to work? I just left a position where I was working 3 days a week, and that was working beautifully for our family. My girls at the time were 3, so they were really young. And I was actually quite settled in what I was doing. So yeah, how do I manage this business when I've got two toddlers at home who I'm thinking next year they're going to be starting preschool? So lots and lots of different things that are going through. But a key part of this stage is ending. So what am I letting go of here? What's different? And running alongside that as well, what's exciting? Excitement comes out here, but there's lots of different other elements here around anticipation and frustration, denial, worry, anxiety about, what's going to happen in the future. And the important thing to stress here as well is that these emotions that we experience as part of endings can happen through a whole variety of different changes that occur, even ones that we would cite as being a really positive one that we've chosen. That might, setting up my own business, or thinking in the future, I might want to move house, or when I get married, all of these different things, very, very sort of exciting sort of changes in our world. But running alongside that, there is going to be, some other emotions that perhaps don't all feel bright and exciting. There's also that apprehensive and uncertainty of how things are going to be. And also what's going to be different, because part of the difference here, part of the ending is an element of our identity also changes. So when I start running up my own business, I'm no longer an employee and part of this team, in part of this big organisation. I'm a one-person band. I don't have a team of people. It's just me. So yeah, recognising where I sort of sit along the scale. And I'm going to share with you over the next few slides a a few different questions and actions that can help to navigate the way through that. You'll see that there's actually a dip then in
Karen,
performance.
sorry, we
Yes.
can't see your slides currently.
Oh no. Oh, right. Bear with me. Have I been waffling along and you haven't been able to see them? I do apologise for that. Hang on a second. Is it showing?
We've got them now. Thanks.
So sorry about that. I know what I've done. I've made a bit of a boo-boo and I didn't hit share. I think when I went back in. Really sorry. So just hear me waffling on. So hopefully you'll recognise from what you've just heard that I've been spending time on that ending section. And then from that, what we then start to do is think about, okay, as I'm in this transition, which for me in that example there, moved forward quite quickly with regards to, okay, what's the possibilities here? um, what opportunities are there? How can I get creative? An opportunity to bring out some of those creativity strengths and skills. What may I be confused about? There's going to be all of these uncertainties with regards to how does this work? How do I get new customers? How does that happen? What's available to enable me to do that. Now, I also see the transition zone actually has been a really key stage where self-coaching and perhaps seeking a coach and getting coaching from others can be really, really helpful, because actually having time to focus on you and your business as well as just being in it is going to be absolutely critical. So having some of that reflective practice on an individual base, or perhaps with another colleague or another buddy, but also spending some time saying, actually, can you coach me on this and help me make sense of actually where it is that I'm trying to get to and how I'm going to actually get there? What does success look like in the future? What is this new identity I'm embarking on as a business owner here? And then what we're then looking to, forward towards is that new beginning. The commitment starts to rise, the clarity starts to rise, the energy rises, and we then start to see those results coming through. And obviously various other sort of different elements that are weaved in as you go through. It doesn't necessarily line up perfectly as the cove here. It will be more ups and downs, peaks and troughs as you go through different elements. One other brief example here as well before I move on and give you some time to think about your own transitions. As I mentioned, running my own business is kind of mapping this curve at different stages where different challenges hit the business. So a different challenge might be, I lose a customer. Or a customer decides, actually, they want to put this particular piece on hold for the next 6 months rather than kind of continue with what we had scheduled. And one of the things that I learned really, really quickly when starting my business is to anticipate the unexpected. Never to assume anything is going to happen exactly as was laid out in the plan. Expect there to be changes along the way. And with businesses as well, we'll get those peaks and troughs like you will within your own businesses, whether that's about recruiting people, whether that's about the book sales, whether that's about building your team, whether that's about, supporting one of your team members to kind of move into a sort of more leadership role. Whatever that kind of sort of change might be, there'll be all those different elements that we can then sort of navigate through. And we will have all experienced in different ways the impact of the pandemic. So again, this model was really, really helpful in recognizing, okay, what am I letting go of here? All of a sudden, we're working virtually, 100% of the time. How do I adapt my business along the way? I'm a people person. I like to be in front of people. It took me a while and I was quite resistant for quite some time that I could still, that I'd be able to still have, connection with people across the screen and then quickly with practice and with kind of quite sort of positive intent to make a positive change, focusing on what I could control, I then started to see what was possible. And then, of course, coming through post-pandemic, which was, 5 years ago now, again, what am I leaving behind? What are the new opportunities? What does that transition look like? And how am I going to make the most of that to take myself forward into new beginnings? So it's a constant cycle. Okay. I feel as if I've done enough talking for now. So I'm going to give you something to kind of work on for you personally on that transition that you've identified. So thinking about that current or that perhaps recent transition, I'm going to just give you a few minutes to think about the stage of ending and letting go. And I'm going to share with you a few questions that I'm going to ask you just to spend a few minutes thinking through as we're working in this group environment this evening. So it's a chance for you just to have some quiet thinking, reflective time. Let me just show you the questions first. So firstly, what feelings are coming up for you about this change? What parts of your old identity or role are you most reluctant to leave behind? And finally, how can you create a sense of closure around this phase to mark the end? So there are three questions intended to prompt some thinking and to allow you to like dig a little bit deeper with regards to what you see happening as part of that stage one ending and letting go. And knowing that we can go through that cycle, we can come back to ending and letting go as we're going through transition. You might notice that there's a real pull of not being able to let go of something, something that you're perhaps doing differently or have a need to be doing differently. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes just to have some quiet thinking time on those three questions. And do feel free to use the chat to share any insights or thoughts that come up for you along the way. Okay, I've just added a couple of thoughts into the chat of my own sort of experience, if that kind of helps with regards to some of those sort of elements. Okay, so I'm just going to share with you a couple of other things on this particular slide. And the next few points here are different actions that you can take that will help you, again, kind of work your way through stage one of that endings and letting go. So the first one here is to identify and kind of express those different emotional reactions, whether that's through talking to somebody else, whether that's through journaling, whether that's engaging in creative activities. I found, again, particularly through lockdown, when I perhaps wasn't seeing people in the flesh so much, just going for a walk, and maybe having a walk and a phone call as I went through was a way of just connecting and checking in with other people. I found that really, really helpful. Like with a lot of as that run our own business, it can feel quite peaks and troughs. And I miss people and having the connections with friends and colleagues when, my client work's really, really busy because we perhaps don't have time for that. But again, it's looking at different ways to enable that to happen. and being really excited about what's happening currently. It's also about separating yourself from old habits or environments that may be holding you back. So another question you might want to ask yourself is, what you might be doing to perhaps enable that to continue. So yeah, recognizing what are those old habits or environments that may be holding you back, and what can you then do to create a positive change here. So there's a couple of things just to sort of summarize here with regards to the endings and lettings go. It's recognizing, that there is a need to let go, but it's going to bring up a lot of emotions along the way, as we've kind of explained here, whether that be around fear, denial, anxiety. And even if it's your own choice, as I've mentioned, we can still notice that there's a real mix of emotions that we're experiencing here. It's about giving ourselves a little bit of grace here, expect those emotions, recognize those, an element of sort of self-compassion, and then letting those go and thinking about, okay, but, what can I do? What's within my control? But just giving yourself a little bit of time to process that. And sometimes it is just sitting with it for a while. Okay, so a quick reminder of our bridges transitions model. We're now going to move into the transition zone. So we've kind of started to progress through, we've recognised that, we're not stuck as we can be potentially if we're not careful in that, endings. We've recognised the need to let go, and we're now starting to consider new possibilities and where can I take this? What's possible with regards to the next stage. Now this should be called, I do apologise, this next slide should be called the transition zone. That's not very helpful, is it, having it called the same thing? So this is the transition zone. So a few questions here. What is most difficult about the uncertainty that you're experiencing right now, and what might this discomfort be teaching you? Okay. How can you define your purpose during this phase, even if it's not fully formed yet? So remember, as part of that kind of middle transition, part of this zone here, this kind of neutral zone, is a chance to get curious. It's a chance to dig deep and understand, actually, yeah, what is my purpose here? So if I'm looking at evolving my business, or adapting due to holidays, or to just other sort of seasonal elements that are happening, what I know about my business, how can I redefine my purpose here, and where I'm going to be spending my time and energies? And what small steps can I take each day that will help me feel more in control? Okay, so these are the three questions that I'd like you to spend a few minutes thinking about now with regards to that middle stage, which is all about transition and that sort of like neutral element as we then start to get creative and think about what we want to get to. So that's stage 2. Thank you, Grace. Yeah, I hear you, Nicola. I do. And you know what? I think one of the helpful things is to know that's what you find hard. It doesn't make it any easier, but just recognizing that that's where it is most tricky or difficult. I think that's really, really helpful, because what you're demonstrating there is your self-awareness. You're aware that that's something that you feel difficult, you find more difficult. One of the things that I find helpful, doesn't take it away all of those feelings, but one of the things that I do find helpful is to ask myself, what can I do and what is possible? And the question on that slide that's just shared at the moment, that final question, what are some of the small steps that I can take each day that will help you feel more in control? Because actually what then you are doing is you're taking those steps around things that you can do something about, and then not giving time and energy, of which we know are both precious commodities, to things that we can't do anything about. And I realize as I say that out loud that I make that sound easy. And let me assure you, from my own experience, I know that isn't. And some days it will feel easier than others. So please keep sharing any other sort of questions or insights into the chat box as we go through. So a couple of ideas of what you can do to kind of help you in this transition phase. And the first one is embrace uncertainty, which sounds kind of quite ironic based on what we were just sort of sharing a few moments ago around how that can create real like angst and can be very, very challenging for us. But there's something here about, okay, so how can we embrace it? And part of that, actually, what I do find helpful is accepting that this phase may and is likely to feel unclear or chaotic. So knowing that that is normal, um, and there's an element here about acceptance. So accept that yes, it's going to be unclear or chaotic, and to also consider what your needs are at this particular time. So another example actually is, for a number of people now, your kids may have just recently done GCSEs or A levels and there is this wait while results day arise, which is a few months off. So actually, there's an element for people here around, well, actually, I don't know what's going to happen or what's possible. And through this, and you would have done a lot of this already, it's looking, what are my options? What are the possibilities? And if this doesn't work out, what are the other things that I can do? What can I do in the meantime to embrace the uncertainty? Are there any questions that I could get clarity over? It also is an opportunity to think about, but where do I want to spend my time and energy? Is there an opportunity then to use that to do some kind of recharge or restorative pieces? And also it's thinking about, reflecting on your purpose and your hopes from this transition, a time to explore new directions and possibilities. And there's that kind of whole reframing there around, yes, I know I'm letting go of the old way of doing things or a different way. From a seasonal perspective, I think we've all got preferences. I really struggle when it comes to working later on in the year where there's hardly any daylight. I'm sat here now and it's beautiful outside. It's lovely and bright still. When I get to, the back end of the year and it's really dark around sort of 5 o'clock, I find that quite tricky. I have to really dig deep and think, okay, but what is possible? And what does this enable me to do that's different? What other possibilities can lie up ahead here? Okay, so let's remind ourselves of Bridges transitions model for our third and final time. And the next stage here of this change is really kind of moving forward then into new beginnings. And as we go into new beginnings, we see that there's a new direction, that there's a new purpose that's ahead of us here. And we're feeling more ready to step forward with renewed energy and excitement as we then start to integrate some of those changes and continue to make progress. So that's where we're going to move on to now, which sounds like a very exciting phase. So stage 3, titled beautifully and accurately, New Beginnings. So a few questions here. I'm going to give you, again, a few minutes to have a look through. Firstly, what new opportunities excite you the most about this change? And how can you start pursuing those today? Next question. What will success look like for you in this new phase? And how will you know once you've reached it? Now, I think that's a good question to start asking yourself through the stage 2 transition, but this is about really drilling down and getting more clarity. What will success look like for you in this new phase? What will it sound like? What will it feel like? What will you see? What will you hear? Really drawing down into some of those behaviors, but also those outcomes with regards to what's different. Will you have more kind of time on your hands, or you be having the opportunity to have different conversations? Is it an opportunity to, strengthen, a different relationship or formulate a new relationship, whatever those kind of new beginnings might be, and how you know when you've reached it. And then finally, I really like this question. What's your first step that you can take towards embodying this new identity or role? as we embrace those new beginnings, there is an identity shift here, whatever that might be. So whether that's about a new role, whether that's about a new client, whether that's about a new recruit, um, uh, whether that's around, my role as a mum is a little bit different here. That's taken a different sort of shift here. So how can I kind of embrace and embody that? What steps I'm going to take? And, again, link it back to mindset that I mentioned earlier on in our conversation today. What steps can I take towards that? What's going to help me embrace that? And then a few, actually, no, that's a bit quick because I give you a bit of thinking time first. So we're just going to give you a couple of minutes thinking time on those questions, and then feel free to dialogue in the chat with me. Okay, so I'm going to just share with you a couple of other ideas for you to practice in this particular stage. So one is around developing new habits and integrating new routines that reinforce those new beginnings. So yeah, so what are some of those habits that are going to be really, really helpful? What new routines are you then going to be creating that's going to really reinforce those new beginnings taking place? And to celebrate the progress, acknowledge your small wins along the way. So, thinking about, what's your reflective practice? How often do you pause to reflect on the progress that you've made? What wins taking place that you can then acknowledge along the way? What the acknowledgement of those small wins does is it gives us our own internal sort of positive recognition. It gives us a buzz. There's a real kind of positive hormone release as we, giving ourselves that reward um, with regards to those achievements. And again, one of the things that's really, really important when we're running our own business is to think about how we do recognise those small wins. We're leading our own business. You as Usborne partners are running your own business and driving successful businesses your way. So yeah, really important that you have those kind of self-managed practices in acknowledging those small wins along the way. Okay. So just a couple more slides here. One of the things that's really, really key to kind of stress here is that, considering the different transitions we go through, we're not all doing those in the same way and at the same time. So being really mindful about all the different people that we're having those interactions and relationships with, being really mindful about our own reactions. And if we're noticing that we're starting to make judgment, just pausing and remembering that everybody does carry a story that we don't know anything about, lots of invisible stories out there. Yeah, so just I find it really helpful just to, if I'm noticing a judgment starting to sort of creep in, just creating a pause and just, yeah, checking in with myself and, asking what judgments am I making here, and how fair is that? So one of the things I wanted to move on to next is to share with you a few strategies to help manage transitions. So I've got a few that are kind of collated on this particular slide. A couple of you will have seen these previously. For some of you, these will be new. So I'm going to start from the bottom left and work my way round. And the first one there is about prioritising self-care. So, what are some of the different steps that you take to look after you and to kind of keep your own internal tank fueled? What are some of the different things that you can do day to day, week to week that enables you to prioritize and enable self-care. So thinking about different things that you can do to, yeah, keep that battery charged, making sure that doesn't go flat. Different things will work for different people with regards to what that self-care is. But yeah, I tend to find if I'm noticing that my sort of time and energy on those aspects is starting to dwindle, I'm likely to feel it in other ways, and they won't necessarily be positive ways. So it's a reminder then around, okay, it's really important that I take my breaks, I get my fresh air, I get my movement, different things that we'll do to generate that. The top left piece here is around different strategies that we can employ to handle or manage overwhelm. And managing overwhelm is a real kind of key element of how we navigate those different sort of transitions, because overwhelm is a quite a common behavior, emotion that we then experience. So it's an emotion that we experience. How does it show up in those behaviors? It might we might notice that we're kind of operating a little bit quicker. As I say, we're not taking those breaks. We might be getting a little bit snappy. Our decision making process could be a little bit a little bit or a lot impacted. So noticing yourself, this is where that self-awareness is really key. How do you notice when that overwhelm is starting to bubble up and be less manageable? And then these 3 steps, these have been shared on a brilliant blog from The Art of Brilliance that some of you will have seen previously. And there are 3 steps that they share. I'm going to just explain those briefly. So the first one is manage your input. So what input are you receiving every day? And what are the different sources that you're gaining that from? So whether that be from conversations, whether that be through messages on our phone, whether that be through social media, whether that be through watching the news, we are accessing an abundance of information every day. And simply put here, it's around what do you do currently to best manage your input? And when we reduce that intake, noticing what difference that might make to you. So a couple of different ways that you can do that is to set yourself some boundaries with regards to when you will be accessing your phone and using it for different pieces, whether that's responding to messages or popping open emails. Lots of you will know that I share one strategy that works for me, which is to put which is to put my phone to bed earlier than I go. So actually, it's not it's not anywhere near me right now, and I don't have any intentions of picking it up before tomorrow morning now. So really manage your input. Helps to handle the overwhelm. What it also does as part of that is it also can have a really, really positive impact on your sleep. Because what you're doing is you're also managing the number of tabs that you have open at any particular time. So that can be another helpful sort of check in how many tabs have I got open. And if it feels like there's too many, then actually what steps can I take? What's within your control to do something about that? Which links me nicely to the next part of handling overwhelm, which is about controlling the controllables. What am I focusing my time and energy on? What can I control and what can't I control? And if you're recognizing that you're spending time and energy on things that you can't do anything about, perhaps something's changed and needs to be really left in that endings, letting go section. Okay, what can I now do then to make that transition in a really positive way, in a really impactful way that's going to help you, your business, and others that you're working alongside as well. So yeah, asking yourself that question every day, what can I do? What's within my control? And yeah, notice the difference that makes. And then the third and final one, and these work brilliantly in partnership, I've been practicing these for a while now, is to recognize that we can do things one step at a time. So if you're looking at your to-do list and it feels vast, then okay, what can you then do to narrow that down and prioritize? I like to work in 3s. So what are the 3 things that I'm going to do today on Tuesday? What are the 3 things that I'll do tomorrow? The reality is there's going to be more that you feel you need to do, but actually, what are the 3 most important things? And if nothing else happens today, what are the 3 really key things within my business that I want to ensure that gets achieved? And then ensuring that you don't get drawn into spending time and energy on other things that aren't your priority. Okay, I'm going to be really quick on the next couple of things, so I give you a little bit of chance to kind of share with me at the end what you're taking away from today's session. I've mentioned here about appreciating differences is another really helpful strategy for managing transition. So kind of recognizing how you draw your energy. Do you tend to draw your energy through connecting and having those conversations with other people? And like the opportunity to sort of talk out loud. You perhaps like to be in an environment where there's, different interactions, a little bit of noise around you. You tend to get your energy more outwardly. Or do you tend to operate more on an introversion basis? And connection is still important to you, but you'll just draw that in slightly different ways. It's likely that you might have a smaller kind of group of friends that you have those kind of relationships, those sort of closer relationships with. And you'll also appreciate some time just to have some sort of introspective thinking and reflection time, and just actually quite happy to work in your own space. And actually, if I'm leading with an introversion preference and I'm always working in an environment that's more lends itself to extroversion, I'm probably going to feel that quite draining. Yeah, so workshops are great, but if they're going to be happening, for a whole week, then I'm probably going to feel quite tired. Or even if I run one on a Saturday afternoon for my team, what do I then need to do to ensure that I've got some recovery time afterwards? Okay, so I'm going to take these slides down now so we can finish on time. But what I'd love to hear from everybody is, what are you taking away from this evening's session? So what's your sort of top tip takeaway or action, or perhaps question you've been asked that you want to give more thought to? What's your next step that you're going to take? Thank you, Karen. Yes, I think for me, sleep's more important than chocolate. I'd rather have sleep any day than chocolate. So whatever I can do to kind of generate the most of that is really, really key. I can operate and do most things if I've had a decent amount of sleep. Again, what can I do to create more of that for myself? Thank you, Lucy. Yeah, focus on what you can control and taking little steps to then move that forward. So I'll then just invite the rest of you that are here with me to share what's coming up for you. I'd love to hear what you've benefited from this evening's session. So please pop your thoughts into the chat box before we say goodbye. Yes, thank you, Lindsay. Yeah, how the new opportunities excite you. Yeah, what could be rather than what has been. Absolutely. Yeah. I tell you what, Lindsay, what's also helpful is if there's somebody else that you could perhaps share that with, that could then let you know when you're focusing on those new opportunities, and also if at any time you might slip into the what has been. And at times, actually, there's nothing wrong with that nostalgia and what has been, as long as we see that it's serving us and others well. If it becomes, overly used, then it's good sometimes just to have someone hold the mirror and say, you know what I'm hearing. So, yeah, good luck with that, Lindsay. That sounds a great one. Anything else from Gemma or Louise or from Karen? May well be typing away as I'm talking to you. So we'll give you one more minute to pop your idea into the chat box before we bid farewell. Absolutely, Karen. So I'd like you to think about what is the one thing you could do to dial that self-care up. If you perhaps recognize that that would be beneficial for you to do so. I think I meet very few people that feel as if they've got that self-care bit sussed, or what I mean by sussed is, that's definitely happening to the balance that I would want. So what can you treat yourself to after this call, Karen, or tomorrow, or both? And enjoy whatever it is that you choose to do. And thank you very much for joining us this evening, and for yeah, sharing your thoughts and ideas in the chat. I hope you found that useful, and yeah, love to hear how you get on. We're going to be sharing these slides. Lucy will remind me in a second where I think it's in tools and downloads, Lucy, you mentioned.
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
get them in the BDP group quite easily and then on tools and downloads as well.
yeah, fabulous. Lovely. Thank you. So letting my toddler, sorry, Gemma, I'm trying to, I think, is that to walk more? Just clarifying so I've understood you right. Yeah, fabulous. That sounds good. I remember that it always feels like quite a big change. Um, but yeah, fabulous. Good luck with that. I always found the thought of something was worse than the reality, so I'm hoping that's the case for you here. Right.